Hello everyone, this is a quick video about a incredibly inexpensive, effective, and chemical-free, toxin-free option for a deodorant, an underarm deodorant. I'm putting this video out there because it's just a tip, something that I've been doing in my own life for well over 10 years now. And it's just also sort of the side purpose of that is to have an excuse to plug a recent episode that I posted for my podcast. As some of you may know, I have two podcasts, kind of my longer standing Overcoming Chronic Illness podcast, and then my newer, more recently launched just in the last few months, Optimistic Future podcast. So I actually posted this episode, the interview that I'm referring to on both podcast platforms because it pertains to both topics. People with chronic illnesses generally should probably avoid toxic chemicals because it can interfere with their healing process. And then also folks that care about the health and well-being of our planet, our environment, the health of ourselves and our families and people around us should also care about toxic chemicals and trying to minimize our exposure to those and our excretion of those into the environment at large. So it applied to both audiences for both podcasts. But in particular, I want to draw more attention to the Optimistic Future podcast because, again, it's just getting launched off the ground, or just getting or recently launched, and just trying to get some more awareness about it because the whole purpose of that podcast is to raise awareness about little things that we can all do in our day-to-day lives to make the world a better place. When we look at the world around us, if we really take a good hard look, it's like, there's quite a few challenges out there. There's environmental challenges, there's economic challenges, there's social challenges, political challenges. It can all be a bit overwhelming, or a lot overwhelming if you really start to think about it. But it's my steadfast belief that there are small things that we can do each day, and collectively it can make a really, really big difference. So whether it's something as simple as shutting off the water, when you're not using it when you're washing dishes to save energy in that way, or not mowing your lawn until June. Don't mow your lawn in May and inadvertently destroy habitats for pollinators. Or it's using this inexpensive, easy to access, deodorant alternative that I'm about to mention to minimize chemical exposure and not contribute to the, problem of, environmental contamination by different toxins and chemicals and whatnot. These are the types of little, tips and tricks and whatnot that are gleaned from the interviews that I've been having for this podcast with different experts in these different areas. So please consider checking out the podcast if you haven't already, even if you're like, I'm too busy, I don't have time for this, but I like what you're saying. I support this idea of let's collectively make the world a better place through our individual actions. Even just please consider subscribing. It just helps to bolster the popularity of the podcast. Ranks a little bit higher on the YouTube channel, ranks a little bit higher on Spotify, ranks a little bit higher on Apple Podcasts. So please consider subscribing. Please check out the episodes if you have time and the inclination, or also please consider checking out the website. It's called optimisticfuturepodcast.com, and on there there's a compilation of all the podcast episodes, but then also a compilation of the simple steps that can be taken to again try to make a difference in the world as best as possible. So with all of that out of the way, with that shameless plug for my podcast, and it's a not-for-profit podcast. I make no money, have no financial gains or other gains in any way, shape, or form with this podcast. Just something that I've put out there to try to do some good in the world over and above what I do in my naturopathic practice here, helping folks with their health issues and whatnot. So anyways, that's where it's coming from, just a place of altruism as best as I can. So long and short of it, let's talk about this deodorant alternative. So this is something I've been doing in my own personal life for the last 10 years or so. Not to divulge too much about my personal life here, don't need to tell you about my daily hygiene practices, but for years I was just really unsatisfied with the results that I was getting from natural deodorants. Some of them were better than others, but then you look and it's like, it's maybe a healthier alternative, or like a more environmentally friendly alternative than a standard deodorant that's, artificially scented with chemicals and full of all these things I can't pronounce. But there were still, maybe some ingredients in there that I wasn't still 100% happy with. Went to certain ones that just didn't seem to work very well at all. And so I wound up just moving on to just plain old baking soda. Baking soda is, of course, one of the least expensive things on the planet. You can get a gigantic box of it for hardly any money at all, much less expensive than a standard deodorant. And so the way that I do this, and I'm just all about not spending a whole lot of time with my morning routine, so there are probably more eloquent ways, shall we say, or classy ways of doing this. But what I do personally is I basically just get some water on my hands and put that, rub underneath my armpits. Then I have my little jar of baking soda. I dip my fingers in there, basically just rub it on the armpits, cover the area as best I can. I'm not, slathering it all over there. It's not like, a ton. It's like maybe the equivalent of about maybe half a teaspoon per armpit. I'm a pretty big guy, 6'3", couple 100 pounds. So, about half a teaspoon, give or take, per armpit, maybe give or take. I've never actually measured it before, but just, enough on, maybe it's a quarter of a teaspoon. Basically just, rub that in the armpit area, wash my hands afterwards, and then that's it. If I have the time, I'll let it air dry. If I'm running out the door, I just put on my undershirt, get dressed, and I'm off to the races. And I found it to be very, very helpful. I mean, generally speaking, I'm thankful to say that I don't have a history of, like challenging body odor issues. I would imagine there's some folks out there that might need something stronger, and I don't begrudge anybody that. If you need to use a stronger deodorant, it is what it is. But I've found it to be very, very helpful. Even if it's been, a long day, a summer day, playing with my kids, sweating, that kind of thing, it's not like, oh man, by halfway through the day, I sure wish that I had some, chemical deodorant on there. It seems to work, very, very well for me. And again, I've been doing this for, about 10 plus years, give or take. I remember being away on a retreat with my wife, and that was when I tried it for the first time for whatever reason. I don't really remember exactly why. Maybe I forgot my deodorant and all we could find was baking soda. I don't remember, but anyways, about 10 years ago, and it's been working really well for me ever since. The one thing I will mention is that I have a couple of t-shirts that, whether it was the sort of manufacturing quality or whatever, over time the baking soda has caused the armpit area to fade a little bit. So it's not like it's burning holes in the armpit or anything like that, but I have this one black t-shirt that, if you take a look at it, it's like, oh, it's definitely on the more faded side, like by the armpit. So I still wear it. I wouldn't wear it to like a super fancy social event. I probably wouldn't wear a t-shirt to a super fancy social event in the first place. That's the one thing just to bear in mind. So might be something to be a little bit cautious with. But that being said, I have plenty of other t-shirts where it has not been a problem at all. So just to be forewarned about that. I think those are all the logistical things I need to say about the baking soda option. So as I mentioned, it's effective. I think it's been working well for me. It's cost effective. You can't really get much cheaper than baking soda, and then it's also very environmentally friendly because there's no toxic chemicals in there. There's no artificial scents, which are also toxic chemicals. It's just baking soda, so good for the environment, good for me, good for the pocketbook. Everybody wins. So if anybody listening to this video has tried the baking soda deodorant option, or if there's other environmentally friendly, cost-effective deodorant options that you'd care to share in the comment section, then please consider mentioning those things. I'm curious about it. I'm not going to change what I'm doing, but other people might be interested in other options. I would just be curious to know what's worked for other folks. If you're watching this on Instagram, then I am I'm going to, by this point I've posted it, so I will have done a co-posting, kind of like a co-collaborative post with the Optimistic Future podcast account that I have on Instagram. So if you're watching this on my dr.brianraid.nd account, then please just consider clicking on the Optimistic Future podcast account, and then please consider following, or that's what we do on Instagram, following. If you're watching this on YouTube, I do have an Optimistic Future podcast YouTube account, so if you don't mind, going over to that, I'll put a link in the description below, and please consider subscribing to the YouTube account. And then if you're watching this on Facebook or Twitter, then I don't have Optimistic Future accounts on either of those platforms as it stands, but please consider checking them out on the other platforms, or go to your favorite podcast hosting site or service, and please consider subscribing. Any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, would always appreciate that. And I hope this was of use.